Welcome back, all you kings, queens, and in-betweens, to another edition of the This Week in Weeb podcast.
Special edition.
Special edition. This is the Boy Love edition.
The chase episode, the one impact kind of episode, the let's kind of go into a bit more of a nighttime Week in Weeb episode.
Is that your sexy voice?
That's my sexy voice. Hello, all you cool cats out there.
I feel like when I try to do a sexy voice, it doesn't come out as a sexy voice.
It can. I think it's just taken away because I see you and you have a very genuinely nice smile. So it's just a very nice smiling person. Give me the sexy eyes, which is, hey, you know what? That'll be another episode altogether.
Yes. We get a lot of that in Boy Love, so...
A lot of sexy eyes in Boy Love.
The two Boy Love series that were my homework were Love Stage and Given.
Yes.
I've gotten about halfway through each of the seasons. I'm on episode 5 of both. I've finished episode 5 of both. And I'm going to give my first impressions of them. What were your first experiences like watching these, though?
So, as I previously mentioned, my exposure to anime has always been very limited to what's on certain Cartoon Network things or what's like hot on the street or what your friends may recommend. Nothing much more expansive than that. It wasn't until I met my wife that she kind of suggested other things to me. One of those things being kind of boy love animes. And my initial reaction was, well, it's not really for me because I'm not gay. And that's when she corrected me very well, and I appreciate that you don't obviously have to be gay to appreciate it because the storyline is still cute. Obviously, if you can identify with the characters in the show, it definitely can become a much more personal anime. But just like when I watch certain superhero, I'm not that superhero. I can still appreciate this very much. So I'm thankful that she was able to open my eyes to this specific genre. And in my opinion, the specific type of boy love episodes and animes I've seen are probably some of the most romantic, sometimes problematic, and well-written, well-voice acted, beautifully drawn animes with a very heartfelt message that I haven't seen in other animes.
I will say that going into these, I was expecting it to be similar to a lot of the Yuri romance stuff that I like. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is in many different ways. It's very similar to Yuri. And the funny thing is you brought up sometimes problematic.
Yeah.
And there was a handful of times in just the 5 episodes that I watched of Love Stage. Where it gave me Bloom Into You and Citrus vibes because there's a lot of problematic elements in especially Citrus, but also in Bloom Into You where there's an issue of consent, and that gets right to it in Love Stage. Was episode 3, I think it was, maybe 2?
I think kind of also unfortunately goes to the idea that whether it is boy love or mainstream anime, consent is always seen as an option and it's often not included, and it should be. Given definitely, I don't think Given doesn't, well, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but Given is infinitely less problematic than Love Stage. Love Stage will just get right up on it and say, we're doing this.
I will say Given, I haven't really gotten to the boy love stuff yet. By episode 5, I can see it starting to form, but there's not really anything that we've gotten into from like episode 2 of Love Stage.
Well, I think with Given, it was kind of what we mentioned, or what I had mentioned in the first episode of our podcast, which is sometimes with certain anime, they don't necessarily just come out and make it a big deal of being a same-sex couple, but focusing more on the fact that I'm developing feelings for someone. There is now a connection with this person that I didn't think of before and how that's affecting me and what that means. And Given absolutely has that feel to it, that feeling of I'm falling for someone. They're going to get into the boy love aspects of it later on and definitely have that moment of, oh my God, this person is also a boy, and kind of go into that. But I like that slow build. With Love Stage, they definitely focus in a lot more, but then they kind of get over it very quickly and say, well, what are we going to do?
In Love Stage, Ryoma or Ichigo, whatever, Ryoma is what I'm going to call him, who is the, more well-established actor, the one who was playing a boy originally in the commercial.
The dark-haired protagonist.
If we should probably run down what the premise of the show is, just in case you didn't catch the premise in the other episode where we briefly talked about it. The premise is Izumi, the main character, comes from a
showbiz family.
Star-studded showbiz family. His older brother is a famous musician. His parents are actors, and the father runs an agency, and then they have like a assistant manager / butler who like lives with them.
He does everything for them.
Yeah. And Azumi never wanted to get into show business. He wants to be a mangaka. And
that's what it's called?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great.
And mangaka.
He would be very welcomed on this podcast. Just that week in Weeb with Izumi.
Absolutely. And when he was younger, his parents were starring in a commercial. And in that commercial, they had to have a little girl and a little boy, and they were supposed to catch a bouquet that was being thrown by Azumi's parents or his mother. And the girl got sick in the last second?
She missed her plane, I think it was. She just couldn't be there. Something happened where they had to fill that role.
Yeah, they had to fill the role. There was nobody suitable. They didn't want to miss the light or anything. And Azumi, as a little boy, looked like a little girl, essentially. And
his mom offered him up. And she very quickly was like, oh, yes, take my son, put him in the dress, just out of nowhere.
And he made a very good little girl who was very adorable.
Yes.
And ended up doing this commercial. And now 10 years later, they want to redo the commercial. And when they want to bring in the little boy who was also going to be catching the bouquet.
Who is now a famous actor and definitely a well-known entertainer in his own right.
Yeah, he made the condition for him coming back to do this commercial that the entire original cast has to come back, including the girl.
Which originally you think, well, that's a very odd request, but we wonder why. And as they go into it, they explain that he's held a very strong torch for this little girl his entire life.
He has an 8-year-old girl's picture on his phone as his background as an adult.
That was the first problematic thing, which is like, wait a second, he's been in love with an 8-year-old little girl his entire life. There's nothing wrong with it. It'd be one thing if maybe they kept in contact and he kind of grew up with her, but his only exposure was for her as a child. You wouldn't still look at that person like, I'm still in love with her. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
he's in his 20s, right? He's older than Azumi, right?
Yeah, assuming at least that he was, let's say, 10 when she was 8, at least 10, then exactly, he at least would be 20.
Yeah, so he's like 20 or 21, and he flips open his phone at one point, and there's a picture of little Azumi dressed as a girl from the commercial as his phone background.
Which he looks loving. Which, again, that means at some point, he either did research to have that and got his assistant, whatever, to get that picture, and he's probably had it on every phone since then. You think a person changes a new phone once every year, every couple of years or so, that means he's gone through at least 5 iterations of Izumi being on his phone.
But they all have flip phones. So if you think about them all having flip phones, 10 years prior to flip phones would have been the Nokia brick. Like, you wouldn't have had a picture on that phone. Right. It wouldn't have even been a camera phone.
I mean, once he had the ability to put a picture as your background, he said, I know what I want. We better find this picture.
And it was just a moment where I was just like watching it, and this is my eyes went like, okay.
Yeah, it hit different. Like, wait a second. Wait, what? I paused. I remember one of the first I saw, I paused like, wait, he has that as his background? I don't even have my partner as my background.
Yeah, I have my son as my background on my phone.
Well, you made him. That counts.
But like, and having a child as your love, essentially your longing love interest, so far they haven't gone into his love life since then. In between them, I don't know if he's had any kind of a love life in between there, but you have been pining over this 8-year-old child.
Exactly, which is also kind of weird, like assuming that he probably did have some kind of partner or love or something during this time.
Did you change your background?
They were, well, that's one thing. Would you change your background? Or would he always see this person as just like, you're just a placeholder until I can find my love once again? Like, because he never knew this was going to come out. He didn't know that the company wanted to do it.
He was looking for her too, or him, I guess. Yeah. He was looking for Azumi because he mentioned when he found out that Azumi was not in the industry, when the manager told him that, he's like, oh, that's why I never saw you anywhere. Because it was like, so he was like looking for,
I was trying to keep in mind of her. So that even before the opportunity to redo the commercial came in, he was already obsessed with her. He did. This was just like his, fate has given me this chance to see her, what he thought was her again. And he was just pining for her this whole time.
This is all early on, this first episode stuff, maybe second episode, but we're going to talk about at least the stuff I've seen up to episode 5. So I would recommend you go and watch this if you want to watch it, but it's also fun to just experience it, even if you kind of know what's going to happen in the first half of the series. First third of the series.
I had watched it before, but I went back and I watched the first first couple or first episode again, just kind of refresh my memory. And as soon as I did, a lot of it just came rushing back. And it is fun that to kind of watch again, which I'll say the same thing for Given. And I think that one I'm gonna be a bit more reserved on some of my thoughts because there's
plot. There definitely seems like there's
definitely
plot
stuff that I want you to experience completely blind, to just kind of go into it without me giving you any kind of like, oh hey, pay attention to this thing. Like, no, I'm gonna just let you enjoy because I want to get that genuine reaction from you afterwards.
So talking about some of my thoughts on Love Stage, coming at it from the perspective that I typically come at them, or that I would be coming at it now with my anime background, I was looking at it and kind of comparing it to things like Bloom Into You and Citrus and Whisper Me a Love Song and Donuts Under the Crescent Moon, things that I've watched. Oh, and Kase-san and Morning Glories. And those are like the same gender romance that have experience with in anime.
Are they all Yuris?
Yep, those are all
I've never
Yuri.
watched a Yuri, but
Well, I have homework for you. So, I have the Whisper You a Love Song is a manga that I'm reading. I'm caught up and it's still going, so I'm actively reading it. And it's getting an adaptation in April. And Bloom Into You, I finished the manga, watched the first season. It never got a second season. Citrus also never got a second season, but I'm also actively reading the manga now. And Kase-san and Morning Glories was a movie. But
I'm opening my browser in incognito mode to look some of these up.
none of them are bad. They're not particularly ecchi or anything like that. Citrus is the most ecchi out of all of them.
Well, I guess as a side note for to kind of also give just another, as if you haven't gotten it already enough, but to give another kind of insight into my thing. For the longest time, I thought that Yuri was synonymous with hentai.
So did I, actually. I always thought it was just lesbian hentai.
Exactly. Same thing with BL. Just like what's there between BL and yaoi? It's just whatever it is.
When I would hear like BL or boy love, I would always get images of that one show that everybody recommends as a meme when everybody asks what anime should I watch. You'll see on like Reddit or whatever, they'd be like, I'm getting into anime, what anime should I watch? And the first response is Boku no Pico.
I've heard of it. I've never watched it.
You just have to know it's man, little boy.
Oh God, but
it's the meme now because people will be like, "What anime should I get into?" And because the funny thing is My Hero Academia in Japanese is Boku no My Hero Academia, so it's like oh, it sounds legitimate.
So, got it. Okay, I get it now. I've caught up.
But like that's what I always associated the term boy love with.
Yeah.
Until I started getting into anime and I understood kind of that there was more depth, and especially after I watched Yuri on Ice, and I watched that and I was like, oh, this is boy love.
Well, I thought Yuri on Ice was Yuri, and I didn't realize it is, but it's not.
That's very deceptive. That's deceptive marketing. They're like, you're coming here expecting Yuri, you're getting yaoi.
So
yowed.
I think that was another reason why I was also hesitant, because one, I didn't think I was going to appreciate as much being a person who wasn't, identifying as gay or anything else. I'm like, I'm not going to appreciate the way someone who is would. And then on top of that, I did think it was basically just like hentai, and as we discussed, that's not ever been my interest. But because I got a strong recommendation from someone who I trust, I figured this, let me try it out. And like I said, both of these are just great to watch.
The one thing that we were talking about, consent being, regardless of genre or whatever, being sometimes an issue in anime, you don't really see it a lot in hetero anime romance.
You don't.
When how often does that ever come up where one of the partners is like really forward to the point of pushing consent? We're not, and you can't even bring up gushing because that's girl on girl.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So, but if you look at a romance genre anime, it doesn't really come up all that often, but it is prevalent in the Yuri that I've read, and in now at the very least Love Stage. I don't remember anything really being an issue in Yuri on Ice, but it's been a while.
I think, Yuri on Ice also has its consent issues sometimes in terms of like...
Well, it was a control thing.
No, the reason why I say consent is because I think consent is if you know someone is okay, uncomfortable with certain things, pushing them on what you enjoy, knowing that they don't like it because you think it's cute or funny, that's also consent issues. And that was definitely very prevalent in Yuri on Ice. I think for me, a lot of the ideas, unfortunately, of consent in certain animes and shows goes back to the idea that they hold on to this idea that it's very attractive or it's very gung-ho of the protagonist saying, oh yes, I'm going to sweep you in my arms and I'm going to kiss you hard. Never thinking, does this person want me to kiss them? And then the anime turns out that they may resist, but then they like it and they enjoy it, so they give in.
Well, why do you think it's in Yuri and Yaoi more often than in traditional hetero romance anime?
if I had to venture an uneducated, uninformed guess,
As a consumer,
as a consumer, I would say because these specific Yuri and Yaoi animes are definitely much more sexually focused beyond just like BL or lighter Yuri. It starts to become where sexuality is such a driving force.
it's part of the plot.
You don't need to wait for consent. You're just overtaken by this lust. If you think of like again, things that I've been exposed to, like I mentioned to is my trademarked category of ecchi light, things like Miss Kobayashi, where Toru is kind of being very forceful with certain advances, everything else fine. Obviously consent's an issue, but it's because she's just overtaken with love, and it's not gross or consent, it's romantic. And that's the thing now when you get into, I think, your certain Yuri and Yaoi, it's more so the fact that they're so overtaken, consumed by their love and or lust that they can't control themselves. They're just a victim to their feelings.
Do you think there's any lingering commentary on deviance? Because in there's a lot of older media that would portray being anything but cis hetero. Cis didn't really exist back when this was a thing, but cis heteronormative as being the default, and anything else was considered deviant. So is it a stretch to be like, well, they're into this deviant behavior, so why
They're probably onto this? It all
well,
kind of blends together. I think, and again, as a non-Japanese cis het man, I can think that from what I've seen, what I've been exposed to, it does seem that Japanese culture indulges more in certain things outside the norm because there are so many regulations and expectations of the society as a whole. So they understand that that's going to be a deviance that you have, and it's okay as long as you just do it on your own and just deal with it, and that's it. Which is why they have vending machines with panties, because they know, hey, people are going to want panties. Let's just give it to them, and that's it.
let them have those panties?
Because they have, you know, the idea of like tentacle porn is so prevalent because it is so prevalent. Like they say, well, people obviously like this, so we're going to put it out there. Yuri and Yaoi are so prevalent and popular, and instead of forcing people to kind of hold on to their things, there is still a certain idea of maybe like shame that goes with it, but you're expected to have this shame and you're expected to have these thoughts and feelings. So the idea that it is you're diverging from what the norm is supposed to be, but it's still okay, and to satisfy those needs, here's the genre for you.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think it does start
Know
just
it going
kinda,
in.
Exactly. It starts to kind of blend together, which is like if you're into Yaoi, you're probably into the guy forcing himself on the other guy, because it kind of just goes together, which it doesn't necessarily have to. And I think Given, for the most part, is a good example of that. For the most part, unfortunately, you see that again. It's unfortunately a thing that kind of comes together. Which I mean, even going outside the scope of anime for a second, if we want to be a bit more blunt, and again, this is the After Hours Week in Weeb podcast. Even if you think of like traditional, you know, American porn, the guys are like very forceful, and the women in it, when it's like cis het porn, they're like, oh, and they love it, and they love when the guys like. In actuality, most women do not want to be treated that way, and that's the issue with porn. It sets these unrealistic expectations of what a sexual relationship should be.
Even outside of porn, just look at the action hero, the traditional action hero.
Yes.
Usually disrespects women, usually very forceful with women. Somebody like an Indiana Jones or a Han Solo. I understand I just said 2 Harrison Ford roles, but
Harrison Ford is problematic.
Harrison Ford apparently is the embodiment of toxic masculinity in his roles, but that is a general thing that tends to be kind
it's
of
an expectation that shouldn't be, but it has become one. I mean, even in the world of like geeky nerdy culture of ours, I love Firefly. I love Firefly very much, but 2 of our main male protagonists, being both Malcolm and Simon, have their moments of being very disrespectful and horrible to the women on the show. Now, that could definitely be a result of the person writing it, you know, Joss Whedon, or it could be because people assume that, well, the male go-to hero every now and then is going to have to just ignore the wants and needs of the woman, which is horrible. And I think that kind of idea that's with like American culture and American things, or even just hero situations in general, is a further example of there are certain archetypes that go along that are expected and that are supposed to go hand in hand with certain things.
In my exposure to Yuri and Yaoi so far, it also seems like they fall into roles within the couple. There still tends to be a more masculine coded role and and a more feminine coded role, even if they're both the same gender. In Whispering You a Love Song, there's the senpai who is, wears like a jacket and more like guyish clothes with a short haircut. And then there's the one who's like the freshman who is like all in cute things and pink and all that kind of stuff. And in Bloom Into You, there is the older sister. Well, I guess she's technically the younger sister, but she acts like she's older, who is like the class president, and she's very domineering and things like that. And in this, there is Azumi, who is more meek and kind of feminine in how they present themselves, and you have Ryoma, who is like the masculine personification in his roles.
Let me take you and kiss you kind of thing.
And I think it's a little interesting in Given, from what I've seen so far, that there doesn't seem to be as much of a dichotomy. I mean, the guy with the red hair, who I'm going to forget the name of.
Mafuyu.
Mafuyu, yeah. He seems a little bit more of the feminine side.
Yes, he's a little soft. Yeah. He's a soft boy.
Yeah, he's a little softer. He reminds me of that scene from, you ever see Bedazzled with Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley, when he gets the emotional thing and he's crying?
Exactly.
That's who he reminds me of.
He's definitely a soft boy. I think now that you got me thinking about it, I think another big part of it is going to be the fact that if these are aspects of one's own nature that is still considered a deviance, but acceptable one, then I think it's always going to be more of, I need someone to bring me out of this. I need someone to bring this out of me. So it's not necessarily me that they've seduced me, they brought it out, or I may need someone to encourage me out of this. So even like in American TV shows, you have the one person who maybe is LGBTQ plus, but still in the closet. And then you have that person who's very much out, is trying to get them to get out and helping them, encourage them and move them out. And in certain contexts, certain perspectives, it could be seen that, well, they're corrupting them. And another is like, no, they're helping them find their true selves. And I think in certain animes, they kind of take that to an extreme of, you like this, you like this. And in actuality, the way it's presented, like, I do like it. I just can't bring myself to admit that I like it. But unfortunately, that's a very big consent issue.
Yeah.
And I think it's seen more as like, well, no, he's helping him find his true self. And like, no, you're forcing him to do something he's not uncomfortable, like he's comfortable with. That's let's call it what it is.
They hit some of the same beats out of the ones that I've seen, both Yuri and Yaoi. Like out of the three Yuri and Yaoi series that I've mentioned outside of Given, because I haven't gotten that far yet. But in Bloom Into You, Citrus, and then in Love Stage, there's also the plot point of the stolen first kiss.
Yes.
Which is a plot point in all three of them. There's a moment of actual assault.
God.
Like legitimate assault in all of them.
It's so uncomfortable. It's so horrible.
And there's even the scene in Love Stage, which was from the last episode that I watched, where Azumi was sleeping.
Oh my God.
And he kept kissing him.
So okay, hold on. We're gonna jump ahead real quick. You could definitely finish your thought first if you want.
No, go ahead.
So that scene, it's one of those things that I felt horrible to say that I found it funny. And the reason, because they do
they were framing it funny.
Exactly. They frame it a funny thing, but when you really think about it, it's horrible. He's trying to get away to do whatever he had to do with his like acting job, whatever.
Yeah, the president called him or whatever.
But he's like, okay, just one more kiss, just one more time. Well, no,
this will be the last one.
This is the last one. And it is funny, but you're like, you're kissing an unconscious person. Stop it. Go do what you have to do. Leave this unconscious person alone. But the way they framed it, it was funny, and I kept laughing, and then I felt horrible. I found it funny because, exactly at its core, it's not funny. It's not okay. Don't kiss unconscious people. Like if nothing else, take away from this week in Weeb special edition, don't kiss unconscious people. But the way he kept kind of coming back to it, making excuses of why he had to and what was right. Well, that wasn't right. Now he's so cute.
Can't miss this opportunity.
Exactly. Just kind of like, okay, one more. And then I remember they even added little sounds like, okay, one more.
You just picture the voice actor in the booth going,
kissing the mic.
Okay, give me a wetter one. Okay, give me like a peck. This is, you're kissing his forehead. What is he kissing, his hand or something in the booth?
Oh man, it was one of those things where, again, it's horrible, but in the context they made it funny, so it was funny, and it definitely hit the nail on that head because I got a huge laugh out of that scene.
It's been a plot point in I think 3 different points at this point, the kind of consent kind of thing in 5 episodes that I've watched. In the second episode, and I think like back to back episodes, because he only meets him again again in like the end of the second episode, or maybe the third episode.
No, technically the first episode, because at the very end of the first episode, after they actually get him into the outfit and he's all good to go, they're like recording.
That was the first episode.
That was the first episode, and the reason why, because I watched this one today. They're recording the actual commercial, and as they're recording, the butler assistant guy is going through the script. He gets to the last page of the squeeze, and he sees the kiss, and he loses his shit, and he's running towards the scene where they're filming 1 second too late, and he sees that the dark-haired protagonist, I forget his name, is kissing Izumi, and he's thinking, crap. And Izumi is having their monologue. Then all of a sudden they're screaming inside their head because...
Wasn't the whole fantasy sequence that he had with the magical girl?
Oh, I have to see. No, but at the end of the first one, during the credits, the end credits was the kiss. And I know afterwards, I think we do find out, you can tell me if I'm wrong because you watched the other ones, that he find out that was also his first kiss.
Yeah.
So
stolen first kiss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now again, we're kind of adapting these things where the focus wasn't on, oh my God, I kissed a guy. Like, oh my God, that was my first kiss. I didn't even know it was coming. And that's one thing that I did appreciate, the fact that they don't focus on the same sex aspect as much and more just kind of focusing on the general idea of it being a romantic, or what's supposed to be a romantic session.
Yeah.
But again, you're right. That is still another point of a physical act that's not consensual. I would have liked for somebody to tell Izumi the script and like, and then you're gonna kiss him.
So?
Nope. They just put him in the dress and good luck. And
no, because the father hid it from the manager.
Oh, that's
the
right.
Father hid it from the manager.
And he didn't know about. Okay, but then the father, you can't not tell.
Yeah, how do you do that when you know that Izumi didn't want to participate in the first place?
If he had to hide it, knowing that he's not going to like that, then don't do it. He doesn't. You just established the best reason why you shouldn't do it. He's not going to like it. Come on, or at least give him the choice. They gave him the choice to dress up. They had to bribe him, but they gave him the choice to dress up, and he decided, okay, I'll do it.
I don't know if I could deal with that alarm clock.
By the fourth day, it was too much.
Yeah.
By the fourth day, I would have thrown it. Even if it was even if it was Steve Blum telling you, "Hey, cowboy, get up." Time, like, oh, okay, fine. First few days, fine. By the third time, Steve Blum, you gotta stop. No more. You got no more. Stop.
He essentially gets bribed by his older brother, who's like a famous rock star, who went and got the voice actress for his favorite magical girl to record a personalized message to put on an alarm clock to wake up Izumi in the morning because he wants to be a manga artist.
Yes.
So this is the character that he's got.
His favorite anime.
Yeah, he's got things all over the place. And I just don't know if I could hear Izumi, it's time to wake. Oh, Jeremy, it's time to wake up. Do your best today, every day.
I did think about. I remember the first time I did think about, like, all right, who would I want to hear every day as my alarm? And I couldn't think of anyone, because anyone that I did like, I liked them too much to end up hating them. Because at any point, I think everyone can relate to, you end up hating your alarm. Like some days, okay, it gets you up fine, but there are some days like, if I hear this thing one more time, I'm going to throw out the window. And I would not want to put someone that I enjoy their voice to that.
The moving beyond the first episode, we have which I didn't even realize and make the connection that was the first episode, but yeah, moving on beyond the stolen kiss, because you can move past it because it was in the script. It wasn't something that
was done with like a slightly malicious intent.
Ryoma didn't do it on
selfishly.
His own. Yeah.
Exactly.
But when he finds out about Izumi being a boy and not a girl, in a very quick, haphazard way, because the brother literally lifts up his shirt,
which that's
or pulls
also
down the dress.
Come on.
Yeah, and then he like goes off on him, says a bunch of mean stuff about him and his family, and then when he comes over to Azumi's house to try and purge himself of these feelings because he's still thinking about it, he comes up with an excuse to come to Azumi's house to get the marble back, the good luck charm, and he essentially assaults him. And the only reason it stops is because the brother stops them. And then to go past that, he tries to apologize and this and that. And then after a whole bunch of stuff, Azumi starts to see him in a different way. He's helping him draw manga.
Which, what the hell?
Yeah.
I remember I saw that and I thought, how are they going to come back from this? You don't come back. That's assault. That's sexual assault. What are you doing?
He came back from it like 4 times.
Like you make, but not to make things too real, but that actually does happen, unfortunately, sometimes in real life. There are certain people in couples, in relationships, that they get, unfortunately, horribly either abused, assaulted, whatever, but that person is so brainwashed or so involved or whatever it is that they didn't mean it. They make excuses for them, like, well, they could be better. No, they're getting getting better. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But that's huge to just kind of like let go in a few episodes. I mean, for me, that was the first time that I had seen some kind of very, for all intents and purposes, graphic assaulting in anime. Again, I'm used to ecchi light, where it's kind of implied, suggested. People make jokes about big boobs, and that's it. So to see an anime that's been like silly, like, oh, he's a boy, everyone's laughing, like, okay, well, now I'm gonna just take you because you want it and it's your fault. Like, holy shit. It got way too real too quickly.
It definitely did. We talked about it in our Should You Watch of Citrus, which I don't know has aired or not yet by the time this episode goes up. But the main character in that is assaulted multiple times by the other love interest in the show and also by another friend of hers. And she always ends up blaming it on herself and makes herself the focus. She's always constantly down on herself. And they don't make it a plot point about the fact that she's victim blaming herself. And it's weird because there's a lot of cool aspects to the show that I really enjoy. But that is it's a problematic thing that they just kind of glaze over. And they talk about it from the fact of, well, you have this distant behavior and this and that. Is like, well, we're not going to talk about the fact that she literally assaulted you. Like, that's not going to be a plot point that we're going to discuss.
Which I kind of wonder, why do they include it? Because if you're not going to discuss it as what it is, then you could probably do without it and find another way to kind of tell that story without having that happen.
Is it just titillation?
I don't know. It could be that. It could be a small way for some sick person to get this out into a mass media. It could be any number of things. I just feel like if you're not going to address it properly because it's too serious for anime, then don't include it. You don't have to have that in there. You could have them look at them longingly. You could have them find that they've written their name in their notebook 100 times. That's creepy enough sometimes, but to go that extra mile of making it, like I said, kind of too real for a lot of people, that not only is horrible just to watch, but it could be extremely triggering. Imagine if you're in someone who's been in that situation, you sit down to watch what you think is a funny anime, and all of a sudden you're having like PTSD flashbacks to a horrible thing that happened to you. That's a lot. And then in episode 2, they kind of like, oh, well, it happened, whatever, it's not a big deal, just don't do it again. What?
I think it's not necessary when they include it, considering they already had enough problematic behavior on his part. They already had the little girl on his phone. They already had the fact that once they exchanged numbers, he was texting a whole bunch. I mean, I guess that technically happened afterwards, but that's a problematic behavior. He comes to his school without asking, things like that. And then you have the thing with him kissing him while he's sleeping. So there's enough other things in there without you including that in it.
I think it's because a lot of people who maybe create this are still under the impression that people will see those kind of acts as romantic.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, look, he's so obsessed and it's so cute. And that's not the case, because that kind of just still makes it okay for others, or it kind of still kind of gives a thumbs up on that kind of behavior.
We've kind of been talking about this from a very negative standpoint a lot of the time. I do enjoy the anime.
It's so, again, I recommended this one because, and I said from the beginning, it's extremely problematic, but it is funny. It's an interesting BL to kind of get into. I like the fact that they don't obsess and kind of go over the fact that, oh my God, it's another guy, but more so just like, I kissed this for the first time. It's a feeling. What am I developing? Now I'm all messed up because I can't stop thinking about him. And it's those kind of things that I thought was cute in a very funny way. Plus, the secondary characters, like the butler assistant, like the brother, are hilarious to watch. I think they're very well written, both in the dub and sub. And it's one that I thought, to give you an idea of the BL I've been exposed to, I thought it'd be a good kind of jumping off point.
I like how the main character, Azumi, has their own storyline that's going on that doesn't include anybody else.
Yes.
He has the manga that he's working on. He ends up looping in Ryoma into it. And I thought it was interesting when Ryoma draws the stone tablet thing, and it was really good. And I was like, is this going to be a point where he's going to be like a better artist with him than him or something? I
thought so too. I thought it's just going to give him another reason to hate Ryoma, just because now not only does he keep kind of like forcing himself on me, not even like physically, but just like forcing a friendship onto me. But now he's also better at the one thing I would love to be good at, and he just does it so naturally.
Yeah, because he was so matter of fact about it, but it was like a hyper realistic drawing of this thing.
Again, it had its moments. And I, even because we are doing the whole weekend Weeb, I thought, great, someone who also, an anime about someone who's so obsessed and appreciates anime and manga things, and he's hanging out with his friends where they just spend hours reading manga, and I thought that was funny as well.
He shows up. He's like, "When are you guys gonna start?" It's like, this is it.
This is it. Yeah,
we just read manga and we draw manga.
Which I'm sure someone who maybe would come to one of our D&D sessions probably think the same thing. When are you guys gonna start doing? Like, we've been doing this for an hour. Like, we're at this door. Well, we're figuring out the door. We're gonna run a skill check on the door.
We're gonna go through our entire character sheet.
Exactly,
Which one of us is gonna pass?
Yeah.
Moving from Love Stage onto Given, I think there's, as of where I am in the series, less to talk about with Given because I think it's a slower burn. It seems like it's taking a little while to build up. I'm enjoying it, but it's taking a little while to build up, where I feel like Love Stage was very rapid fire right from the beginning. There was a lot of stuff happening. And in this one, it is about a protagonist, essentially, who is in a band. You might be able to explain this better than me.
So I'm trying to think, how can I explain this without giving too much away? Because again, this is one that I adamantly want you to experience blindly. I want a serial because I know, at least for me, there are aspects about it that I did not see coming at all. And I was completely wrong about what my assumptions were. And I love that I was wrong. And yeah, it's definitely a slow burn. I definitely think they do say less in general, but what they do say, if you're paying attention, is very poignant. And I can say right now, from my perspective, currently on a second viewing, all those things that you thought were less hit significantly harder. Once you find out more about the anime as a whole, and if you ever do go back and watch it again, so many little things like, holy crap, that has a whole new context for me.
I have a prediction.
Okay, tell me your prediction.
And this is literally based off of my Yuri experience.
Oh, no.
And I'm going to preface it that if you want to go in completely blind, then don't listen to my theory because it may be right. One of the guys in the band,
Piercing's long hair.
The one who sees them interacting where Mafuyu is singing. He sees them before they join the band.
Okay.
They're out and he had just been crying and that whole thing, and he was singing, and then one of the band members sees them.
Okay.
Whichever one that was.
Okay.
I think that he has feelings for the main character.
For the dark-haired guy?
The dark-haired guy.
Okay.
And I feel like that's going to be a plot point, that at some point that he had feelings for him, and he never thought that, they would be reciprocated, and that he wanted to stay close to him as a band member and a friend, and he thought that was enough for him. But then once he sees him engaging with this other guy, that it's not enough for him, and this whole kind of thing. And that's my prediction for a plot point. I don't have a lot of other predictions outside of there's some traumatic backstory that comes with the characters. When I tell you
that there's a hard left turn on this, I hope you have your seatbelt on. There is a hard fucking left turn that they don't even give you the full puzzle piece. They kind of just flash you a picture of the box, and then later on they're gonna dump it all at once at you, and it's all gonna fit, and you're gonna be like, holy crap. Because And you know what? Again, this is my personal opinion that I may be a bit slow on pick up certain things, but there are things that come out in this anime that, again, for me, even based on my experience, just like general romantic animes, caught me off guard just off the bat. So to give a short version of premise without trying to give anything away, there's a dark-haired protagonist, Ritsuka. I'm looking up the names right now. Yeah, Ritsuka. And you know what? Here, I don't even want to share like the character list because I feel like it's gonna give some other stuff away. So Ritsuka's a dark-haired guy. We open up on him being kind of just like deflated, unmotivated, indifferent. Fine. He goes to a hallway and he sees a red-headed guy, Mafuyu, laying down, just hugging a guitar. And when he kind of approaches him to go past him, for some reason, this is actually I was discussing today, he sits down. He could have just kept walking, but he sits down and he's like, what's going on? He's like, and Mafuyu doesn't speak much. Whereas the one thing that does definitely bother me about Mafuyu through the first few episodes, a lot of his dialogue is just asking the last thing you said to him as a question. So they'll say, Mafuyu,
he does.
This is an amp. An amp? And I'm like, he just said what it was. You heard him say what it was. Or he says, okay, yeah, and then we're going to go here. We're going to make sure that you get a different body type for your guitar. A different body type? Why are you you know things. Like, you may know things in general.
You know the world.
Yeah, you know the world. You've existed. There was one where they told him something about and we're going to and get money to pay for these things. Money? You know money. But whatever. So he sees him laying down and he sits down next to him. He's like, what's going on? He sees he has a guitar and he's like, well, no, you have to be careful with the guitar. And then he's like, oh yeah, you notice that the strings are broken. And the dark-haired guy, is a musician. So he's like, you can't have broken strings. So he gets all angry and upset. He's like, just give it to me. And he fixes the strings, like, here you go. And he does a chord for him. And the chord kind of just strikes him, because you see that Matthew in the opening sequence of the first episode holds onto the guitar, has it, but he hasn't actually played it. He just has it with him. And then he tells him, can you teach me? Which for me, the first time I watched it, was like, if it's his guitar, why is he asking to be taught? You'd imagine that if you have a guitar, you know how to play already. So that was kind of stood out to me, like, why is that?
My assumption is that the guitar belongs to somebody who was in his family, whether it was a father or a mother or brother, somebody who was connected with him, and that chord hit a core memory or something.
I'm not going to tell you anything, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you.
I know, but that's my prediction.
I'm so close to ending this podcast right now just to finish watching, because it's that damn good. And so, so now the premise is basically that the dark-haired guy is introducing Matthew to his band, made up of a guy with a piercing and a long-haired guy, and teaching him how to play guitar, whilst we learn more about the background of what's going on, why people are the way they are, why Matthew is so quiet, why the dark-haired guy is angry, why the guy with piercing seems kind of aloof and indifferent, and why the long-haired guy seems very involved with everyone.
And I haven't really gotten any of that. In 5 episodes, I've gotten the table set, and I feel like, because I think there's only 11 episodes, maybe? Yeah, it's 11 episodes.
Yeah.
So I got a 6-episode roller coaster coming, because they've set the table.
Left turn. They're going to set the table, and then when you're ready for the meal, they're going to flip it and tell you it's open buffet, go get your own shit, and you're just run. It's insane. Like, so much hits so hard. The biggest, what I will give away as like not necessarily a spoiler, but a spoiler in terms of expectations, the biggest difference between Given and Love Stage, like you said, is plot. The plot of this one is something very deep. It's very personal. It's very emotional. And I would be surprised if you walk away from this not feeling a little messed up emotionally, because it hits deep. Like, imagine any song you listen to, like, will bring on memories. It kind of just like, oh wow, yeah, I remember this time. It's like, it's an emotional tie. Given is definitely one of those animes for me where I can now remember it and think, yeah, that's an emotional anime. If someone were to tell me that I've never cried during anime, I would recommend Given. If you don't cry during this, or at least have an emotional reaction, you may be a robot on Hokkaido Girls.
The android third Hokkaido Girl.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I have kind of been chasing the feeling that I had when I watched Bloom Into You from an emotional perspective, and I haven't caught it yet. I've had some moments in Whispering You a Love Song, not really a lot in Citrus, and some in Donuts Under the Crescent Moon, which is a manga, and I haven't quite gotten that feeling back. But I'm looking for that feeling.
I mean,
Bloom Into You, I finished that, and I resonated with me emotionally.
I almost kick myself for kind of setting that high a bar, and I do want you to kind of go into blind to it, but like I said, for me at least, and if you don't get that same feeling, then hey, that's
I'm a robot.
fine.
It's okay.
That's fine. You know, we all need robots, but it's just because I don't think there's very few animes that exactly resonate with me emotionally, and this is definitely one of them. And for someone who has your experience and your knowledge and such varied taste in anime, I definitely want to see your reaction to this, if it is in fact, oh yeah, it was good, like I get it, but it didn't really resonate, which is absolutely fine as well. But I'm curious, and I think the 6th episode is the turn episode.
I could see it being the turn
it's
episode.
rather not the full turn, but they put on the signal.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay. So I really want you to see this.
All right. So we're going to have to do a follow-up once I've gotten through both of the series, and we'll have even more to talk about. That one will be spoilerific. The Love Stage one was more spoilery than Given. Because Love Stage, you're kind of watching it for the experience. Like, the plot's not really
the plot thing. I mean, they kind of tell you the plot at the beginning, which is he's a boy, just as a girl, the guy loves him, but now he's in love with a boy. What are you going to do? But he's in love. And then hilarity ensues.
The thing. Yeah,
hilarity and non-consensual assault ensues.
The Given has a lot of deep stuff to it that I can already get, and a lot of deep waters that they've only touched on the surface of. And that's very apparent from the beginning. So I feel like going into it as blind as possible definitely is the recommendation.
The way I knew that Given was going to be an anime for me was in the very first episode when the dark-haired guy is going how he got into music. There's a scene where he's listening to certain CDs and he has headphones on, and one of the CDs he listens to is Arctic Monkeys, which is a band that I actually very much like. I've seen them twice in person. The album he picks up is actually one of the few albums I actually have of theirs, and I was like, oh, he has good taste. And I was like, all right, I'll give this one another shot. And I was not going to play Arctic Monkeys during the anime, but still, it was kind of nice to see something more recent and relevant to my own taste that you don't see often. Like the Arctic Monkeys is a huge band. Oh, everybody knows about them. Most people don't.
That's a deep cut.
About them. Yeah, it's a deep cut, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
so
if that deep cut resonates with you, then it's like that's bonus points right from the beginning.
Like, oh my god, yeah, it was a nice little surprise.
Well, we will definitely do a follow-up episode. I think we've hopefully stoked the flames of maybe some people going out and checking out some Yaoi and Yuri and spread the boy love.
That sounds very inappropriate. I feel like you could definitely phrase that better.
Well, things get clipped.
Okay, we'll pay the editor to fix this.
And we hope you like it, and leave a like and let us know if you do. Let us know your thoughts on the topic. Any of the questions that we posed that we gave our uneducated answers on from our perspective. We'd love to hear other people's perspectives on it and start a conversation, because I think some of the things that were posed, I'd like to know the answers to. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely love feedback in general, because I think too often people think that conversation is you just stay in your point and just kind of see how people react to it, and that's not a conversation. It's being open to other ideas or being open to actually discussing it. So I'm always excited and happy to see when we get comments like the other one we got last time, Zero Felix, who commented on it. It was like, great, someone's commenting, because it shows there's interaction. We can kind of get their ideas, their points, information, and I think that's great. And as
our
long as
most loyal commenter,
our favorite commenter, and I think as long as we can kind of engage with people and have a actual discourse about it, that's good, because then, hey, you know what, maybe your opinion will be changed, maybe you'll have a different opinion, and our opinion is from two cishet guys hanging out, so we definitely are not the end all be all for anything, and as long as we can have a respectful civil discourse, there should never be a problem with someone else's opinion varying from ours.
Yeah, so give your answers or pose more questions down in the comment and start that dialogue, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of this Week in Weeb podcast content going into the future, as well as the Should You Watches, and hopefully some essays coming in the future.
Absolutely. And let us know if you want more of the Week in Weeb After Hours ASMR podcast with your host, Jeremy and Miguel.
Yeah, I'll try practicing my voice a little bit better.
Just don't look at me when you do it.
Make sure you ring that bell so you know what's up, and we'll catch you in the next one.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.